It's Wednesday, August the 21st. Lake level is about 914 3/4, about 3-4 inches below normal winter pool. Hadn't been very much generation still. Late in the afternoon it seems like they run water for 2 or 3 hours. The water temperature's been low 80s. It's actually starting to cool down a little bit the last few days with this cooler weather coming in. And the cooler weather's got, the bait fish and stuff moving around quite a little bit. But for the most part, I think the fish has been pretty tough here on Table Rock. There's still several different ways you can catch them. The drop shot bite's been pretty consistent. And, a lot of my drop shot fish haven't been that deep. They've been probably 22 to 30 foot deep, whether they're on the long gravel points or over timber. A lot of times the timber I might be in 50 or 60 foot where the trees top out to about 25 or 30 feet and the fish coming out of the tops of the trees. You can get bit on a 5/8, 3/4 ounce football jig on a lot of the main lake points, but it's kind of like watching paint dry, or at least it has been for me. It's you got to fish dead slow, and a lot of them fish out there seem like they're like on bluff ends or long points where it rolls off in the deeper water. They all seem to be, for me anyways, where it starts to roll off, where it'll go from 20 feet down to about 30 or 35. They seem to be on the roll off with the jig. And you can, use like a wobble head with a creature bait, football jig, a lot of different baits you can throw out there, Texas rig worm. But on the main lake, the dam, Kimbling City, the Baxter and Campbell Point, seems like a lot of them fish 25 to 35 feet deep. You go up in the James River arm, and the fish are a little bit shallower up there on the same type of stuff. They'll be anywhere from 12 feet deep to 25. But, one thing, there's bait all over the place, and I think that's why the fish are so scattered out. You'll be out in the middle of the lake and you'll see bait anywhere from 5 feet down to 25 or 30 feet. Yeah, one good thing about this temperature cooling down, I'm starting to see a lot of bait starting to move back into the pockets and into the creeks. Now, I haven't found a lot of the places where the fish have moved back in there with them, but I have found a couple, and I've been able to catch them on a square bill and a chatterbait. I've been throwing like a little spro. You've got stuff flying all over the place there. And a citrus shad, and a chatterbait. I've been throwing a chartreuse and white. If I can find a pocket or a creek that's got a lot of bait in it, especially if I got a little bit of wind, I like to take the chatterbait, throw it by the corners of the docks or up there if there's any kind of cover in the water. And on this chatterbait, I'm throwing a jackhammer. And I got these at Bass Pro Shop. Bass Pro must have got something worked out with jackhammer. It's a Bass Pro bait, but it's got the original chatterbait blades on it. So they've worked some kind of deal out. But what's good is they're half the price of the regular jackhammer baits, which is pretty neat. But anyways, with that bait and stuff moving, I am seeing a little bit more topwater bait. And normally the end of August, 1st of September, that whopper plopper bite, starts to turn on. And every morning, we've been throwing a square bill mixed up with a whopper plopper or like a Spro Cyclone Junior. It's a lot like a whopper plopper, but a little smaller profile bait. I like it when the water's dead slick, and even when the sun's up, I like the bigger plopper if I got a little chop on the water. But a lot of the places I'm just running mixed rock banks, right off the main lake, cuts and pockets, and even back in the creeks if they got little cuts in them. And a good thing to see when this starts to happen, get up on the bank, you'll start seeing some bluegill beds. We've got full moon right now, so they should be doing their last spawn up there. But when it starts to work, you'll actually catch some bluegill on the whopper plopper or the cyclone or even on the square bill, or you'll have them start, banging it, trying to eat it. So if you get in an area where they're doing that, that's a good sign, because there's usually some largemouth in there or smallmouth trying to feed on them. Now, like I say, it's something that's kind of just starting to happen, but you know, it's going to get warm again this weekend. But as the water temperature starts to cool down, the days get shorter, we should see, hopefully we'll see more of that, you know, happening. Now, one thing, you know, you can do out there in place of dragging a football jig, you know, especially up in the river arms too, you know, the fish get a lot of pressure. They see a lot of the same jigs, whether it's that little jewel, I'm trying to think of the name of the jig, but the real little small one, the little peewee jig, or whether you're throwing a full-size football jig. It seems like a lot of them fish just get used to seeing the same baits. And something that I've been throwing out there, especially on the main lake, it's just throwing a regular drop shot rig. It's the same rig that I use when I'm fishing the treetops. It's got a little Gamakatsu 1/0 hook in it. It's got a little keeper to hold the bait up in there. And I'll take and throw either 3/8 to a 1/2 ounce weight, depending how deep I want to fish, and almost just fish it like a Carolina rig. Same place you're fishing the football jig or even a big worm. I think it's, you know, it works good for them fish that are pressured, a little bit smaller profile bait. I seem to get a few more bites on it than I do on the football jig and the bigger baits right now. Seems like if I downsize, you know, that's helping a little bit. But, you know, other than that, for the most part, other than a little bit of a plopper bite, I haven't seen much of a topwater bite. You get up around the bridge piers, and, you know, doesn't really matter which end of the lake you're at, but there's been a lot of drop shot fish on the concrete bridge piers, and there's been some fish schooling out there around them as well throughout the day. But as far as any topwater fish, any place else, I've seen very little of it. Now, one thing I was gonna try to start doing is give you like a little tackle tip. And my little tackle tip for this week is gonna be trying to save money on fishing line. You know, we all know fluorocarbon line's pretty expensive. So usually whenever I re-spool a bait caster, I leave about 1/3 of my line on there for backing, and then I'll put new fluorocarbon on. One thing you can also do to get more use out of that line, what I'll do is I'll take and cut my bait off. I'll hold this end of the line, then I'll open my bill out, just idle the boat, and I'll let it pull all of the line down to my knot, down to my backing. Then I will take the end that I got in my hand, where the bait was tied, retie it to my backing, and spool that line back up on that reel. And, you know, all that line that's down there that's connected to the backing, that's all fresh line, because, you know, you never cast down to that or anywhere as close to your knot. So what that does, it kind of gives you double the use out of the same deal of line, so you can get a little bit more out of your fluorocarbon. So till next week, good luck, good fishing.